time tomorrow, the polls here in Michigan will be open for the 2016 presidential primaries. And following the GOP debate last Thursday and the Democratic candidates facing off in Flint last night, Mark Brewer from Goodman-Acker and former chair of the Michigan's Democratic Party is here this morning to talk about the showdown between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders and the election as a whole. Good morning.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you.
For joining us. Thank you. There was a pretty big difference between last night's debate and Thursday night's debate. Obviously, is much more policy focused. How is that going to resonate here in Michigan?
Oh, I think it'll resonate quite a bit. I mean, there was more substance last night in the first 10 minutes than there was in the entire Republican debate last week. They talked about the issues, obviously, in Flint, but they also talked about issues important to Michigan: manufacturing, education, the lack of an urban agenda by the Republican Party. So I think Michigan voters who tuned in last night really got a good education about what the Democratic Party stands for, what our candidates are offering.
It was a bit of a change in the tone last night. Even though they focused on policy, they were a little testier last night. I just remember Bernie Sanders like, hold on, I'm speaking. I mean, they're starting to take some of the gloves off.
Yeah, but again, it wasn't personal. It was not what you saw at the Republican debate with all this juvenile insult, liar calling, and so forth. They have policy differences, these two. And I think those came out very clearly last night, and it'd be a great choice for the voters tomorrow, the Democratic primary voters, as to which of these two candidates they want to bear our standard in the fall.
Now, having watched that debate, is there a takeaway that folks at home should be walking away from that debate with them? What was the nugget that you'll remember about that debate?
I think the nugget was that both candidates were very articulate in terms of laying out their vision and their message. So I think we have a clear choice tomorrow, we as Democrats here in Michigan. Between the two of them, I frankly came away very happy. I'd be excited to have either of them be our candidate in the fall and be the next president of the United States.
Now, Hillary Clinton has a pretty substantial lead in Michigan, according to some of the polls. She also tends to do very well with African Americans. Do you think that there's anything that Bernie Sanders can do, obviously not to chip away at her lead here in Michigan, but to connect with the base that has really powered Hillary Clinton in South Carolina and in the southern states to really sort of track her down?
Well, I think he needs to keep talking about his basic message and relating to people. We've never seen him before in Michigan prior to this campaign, and the Clintons have an enormous advantage in that regard. But he has a very powerful message, and I think people over the course of the campaign are listening very closely to that. He's very popular, obviously, with young people. He's raised an enormous amount of money. Has become a very strong candidate over the course of the campaign.
Now let's switch to the other side of the aisle. Of course, it becomes a much messier on the Republican side. What do you think is Trump's magic? He's also doing very well here in Michigan. He's doing well in Florida, Rubio's home state. Did well in Texas, didn't win it. But I mean, what is his magic that he can even go into someone else's house, basically, and win?
Well, the Republican Party for decades has really played to the racist and the anti-immigrant sentiment that's out there, and now they're reaping the whirlwind of that because that is what Trump is tapping into. And all the elites now, the Republican Party, saying, oh, no, that's not our party. That is their party, and that's what they've been doing for 30 or 40 years, and Trump has just brought it full circle.
Now, there seems like there's a big difference. You do have the elites in the Republican Party going, no, he doesn't represent our party, but then when the polls open up, Trump wins. How do you explain the disconnect between the party leaders, and not Trump, but the party leaders and the people that are actually casting votes?
Well, I think what's happened again over the last several decades, those leaders have promised their activists that they would, shut the door, they'd build a wall, right, between us and Mexico. They would do all these terrible things, and they've not delivered. And so the Republican electorate, I think, is just angry, and they finally want somebody who they think will deliver on all the promises that they've been made over the years.
And let me ask this. If you look at what the elites in the party have said in the past, going back to your point, and what Trump is saying now, I don't hear very many moderate voices. Even the folks that are viewed as establishment candidates are conservative, Rubio and Cruz. What happened to the moderate Republicans?
Well, they were driven out. I mean, that's what that party has done over the last several years. People who are moderates are considered heretics, and they're drummed out of the party by the Tea Party types and by the likes of Donald Trump calling you a liar and everything else, any other word that he can think of. So that party has become much, much more extreme, way out of the mainstream of where the rest of the country is.
What would happen, in your opinion, if Donald Trump runs a third party? Because right now, he and Cruz actually aren't too far apart. Cruz has sort of been tracking him down. If Trump steps out and says, you know something, I'm just going to run as a third party because there's a base for him. What does that do?
I think it's one of the worst fears of the Republican Party, because he will take away a lot of their voters, and that'll make either Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton the next president of the United States.
Do you think that that's likely?
I think it's possible that he could run a third party. I think this Cleveland convention could be a lot of fireworks there, particularly if he's the nominee presumptive coming in and they attempt to take it away from him. I think it'll tear the party apart.
And when you say tear the party apart, I've heard some people say literally it could destroy the Republican Party, because you'd have the people who voted for Trump feeling like they were robbed. Do you think that there is a future for the Republican Party if they take it away from Trump in the convention?
Well, I think, that party's got to figure out what its identity is. Are you going to be the racist, xenophobic, anti-immigrant party that we've seen developing over the last several decades, or are you going to come back to the moderate center like you described? That party's got a big choice in front of it, and we'll see how it all plays out in Cleveland.
All right, let's have you put your Houdini hat on. Let's go back to the Democratic side. Let's say Hillary Clinton wins, because she's ahead in the delegates and has a sizable majority of superdelegates. Any idea who might make a good VP?
Oh, I think there's a lot of good folks out there. The Castro brothers have been prominently mentioned. We've got some great Democratic governors. Martin O'Malley would be a great one. I think Sanders would be a good one if he were there. So I think there's a pretty deep bench for her to pick from. And I think it'd be very exciting to be part of her ticket if she's our nominee.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mark Brewer from
Thank you.
Goodman Acker.
Good to see you.
And former chair of the Michigan Democratic Party. Appreciate your time and your insight. When we come back, we'll take a look at today's forecast. But first, here's a live look over Southfield, a bright start to the day on this Monday morning. We'll be right back.